What's going on, family? How y'all doing? My name is Sekou.
This is Betash.
Welcome to our podcast, Preliminary Thoughts, Episode 2. I hope you guys enjoyed Episode 1. It was a banger. We put a lot of thought into it, It was good. We feel like it was good, and we feel like, we hope that you guys were able to benefit.
Yeah.
And there's more to come. So, welcome to Episode 2, and let's dive straight into it. So, I'll be honest with y'all. Today's episode has been weighing really heavy on me for the past couple of weeks. I'm not gonna lie. I've been wanting to let this out for a while now, and we here. So the basis of today's episode is gonna be about justice in light of our communities, in light of just the basic, core tenement of our humanity as it exists today, and how we owe our communities so much more than what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the honest truth is that anyone who looks at our communities and says we're all right, you're not really looking at it from a correct lens. To be honest, to be very honest with you. If you can go outside and you can see everything that's going on, if you could log on social media and see everything that's going on and you say, we're fine, everything is okay, that's a problem.
Yes.
It means you're missing a lot. You're missing out on a lot. And, we're going to dive into it. There's a lot of horrible, bad, nasty, disgusting things happening within our communities, and most people are just silent. They're quiet about it, and somebody has to talk about it.
And not only are they silent, that silence is also accompanied by very problematic ideas, problematic behaviors. Obviously, the behaviors come from the ideas, and these ideas are passed down to all of us in all of our communities from our parents. Whether they are boomers or whatever the case may be, this stupidity and these bad politics, these bad ideas, these lies, they're just continually passed down to us. I mean, regardless, we've all been raised in anti-black and racist cultures. That's basically been spread around the world for some time. So now we can easily look at our communities, whether you're a Zoomer, whether you're a millennial like myself. All of our peers are saying very problematic things and doing very problematic things. And we need to call it out. We really need to pick these things out one by one. And the point is to change it, because we can't keep saying these things and we can't keep doing these things if we want to see real good change.
Absolutely. And I'm going to begin with a quote, but before I say the quote, you see, justice is extremely important because everything that's happening in the world, all of the bad things, is as a result of people not upholding justice.
Yes.
That's the thing that people lack and they fail to understand. When you start saying things like, oh, we're going to be all right, it doesn't matter, it's not that serious. Those are, as Betash, my brother, perfectly said, those are extremely problematic because they allow for the continuation of injustice.
That's where it starts. Once you start saying that and thinking those things, and that's the first thing out of your mouth, it's already a problem.
You got caught. You in the matrix, man. You just caught in the rotisserie. You just got, So we're gonna dive into it. So I want to begin this topic of justice in light of our communities with a quote that I first heard from an imam in our community called Shadid Muhammad. May Allah bless him, Imam Shadid Muhammad. I've taken a few of his courses. This is a good imam, who's doing the right things for his community. Alhamdulillah. And I'm praying that Allah continues to bless and preserve him, because this quote literally changed my life. This quote right here changed my entire life. This is the quote that I was looking for so long. And he quoted in one of his videos, ironically, in which he was talking about the injustices in his community. Ironically, it's so ironic. He used this quote from a man named Jiddu Krishnamurti. I believe he's of Indian descent. I could be wrong, but his name is Jiddu Krishnamurti. Jiddu Krishnamurti says, in light of everything that was happening in America back in the 50s and 60s, he said, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I'm going to repeat it again. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. What does this mean? Someone who, like you just sit down and you're like, what he's referring to is it's no measure of health, right? It's not healthy for a human being spiritually, especially Muslims. I'm talking to the Muslim community here because I'm a Muslim, and my message is to the Muslim community and all communities, but specifically the Muslim community. It's not healthy. It's no measure of health. It is not healthy to be well adjusted, to be, comfortable. It's not healthy to be comfortable. Right? In a profoundly sick society, in a society that's so sick. It's not healthy for you to be comfortable in a sick society. That's what he's trying to say. As Muslims, I'm going to recite a verse from the Quran. This is one of the most powerful verses in the entire Quran. This verse right here. This verse is one of the most powerful verses in the entire Quran. And it's a long one too. It's a pretty long one. This verse is in Surah Nisa, verse 134. Or 135, sorry. Surah Nisa, verse 135. This is chapter of the woman. This surah is named after, it's called the woman. And Nisa, Surah Nisa, chapter of woman. And the verse is 135. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qisti shuhada'a lillah. Subhan. He says, O believers, stand firm. Firm. Qawwamin, strong and firm. Be strong and firm. Qawwamina bil qist, for justice. Shuhada'a lillah, as witnesses for Allah. He doesn't stop there. Allah does not stop there. He says, right? وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Even if it's against your own selves, your parents, or your close relatives. Can you believe this? Allah is saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, kunu qawwamina bil qist. Qawwamin in Arabic is a verb. It's a word that describes. It means strength, strong. Qawwamina bil qist. Do not be weak. Don't say things like, "Oh, we can't do anything about it." That's just how it. No. Allah does not command you to be that. Allah does not command. He says, "Qawwamina bil qist." Be strong upholders of justice, not weak. Not weak upholders of justice. Qawwamina bil qist, strong upholders of justice. Shuhada'a lillah, as witnesses for Allah. Walau ala anfusikum, even if it's against your own self. Look at the Quran. For my Muslims who are listening to this, this is your Lord, the Most High, talking to you. I'm not saying this. This is not coming from little Sekou, who knows nothing. This is not coming from Betash. This is coming from your Lord, the Most High, who's saying, stand firm, for justice, even if it's against your own selves, awil walidaini wal aqrabin, or your family or those close to you. So now, let's fast forward to today. Right? 80% of Americans are currently in debt. The racial wealth gap between African Americans and white people is astronomical. There's so many people on welfare, losing food stamps, being evicted from their apartments. There's so much injustice and corruption, politicians failing us, giving us promises and not delivering on their promises.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many horrible things happening in our communities. What are you doing about it?
That's the question.
Do you think that Allah won't hold you accountable? Do you think that Allah, on the day of judgment, he won't hold you accountable for what you're doing? For watching all of these horrible things happening in your communities and not doing anything about it? Do you think Allah is blind? One of Allah's names is Al-Basir, the one who sees. Allah in Surah Al-Imran, he says, Wallahu basirun bil ibad. Allah is the seer of his servants. He sees everything that his servants does. Wallahu basirun bil ibad. Allah is the seer, the overseer of all of his servants. So do you think Allah does not see you watch a homeless man go down the street and not ponder upon the fact of why he's homeless in the first place? Do you think Allah will not hold you accountable for seeing other people being evicted from their apartments and you didn't even your heart didn't even turn to feel sorry for them? But it's, we can't really do anything about it. They just have to work. They just have to work hard. They just have to listen to the politicians. They just have to do this. That's not upholding justice.
Nope. And we hear that all the time from everybody.
This is from the Muslim community. I'm wondering, Betash, do you hear this from your community too?
Well, yes. I mean, we all know, white people in white America is the center of all of this kind of like silly nonsense. And it's actually very inspiring to hear you talk about this, because I remember in undergrad where we met, and a friend of ours, led me to the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. And I was trying to, I was not raised a strict Muslim, but my ancestors were Muslim. When I was young, a lot of them were still around, and they've since passed. But I was not well versed, and so at that time I was feeling very like I wanted to connect to that. I wanted to learn about Islam and really connect back to my ancestors and all of that.
Absolutely.
And there were great blessings. I mean, I met you I met a lot of our our brothers there and made a lot of friendships and stuff. Some of them didn't last that long, but I was very disheartened to see such a mixed group of young men and women who were so anti-black. Not only anti-black, but anti-ADOS, anti-freedmen, anti-African American, whatever term you may know or use. And hearing you speak, it's really helped me to realize that even though I am not really considered a Muslim, even though my ancestors were Muslim for hundreds of years, it was very disheartening, and it helped me to see that all of these young men who claim to be Muslim, who claim to be this, claim to be that, they're actually very bad Muslims. They actually are not even worshiping Allah the way Allah had passed on to people to worship. And they're hypocrites. They say horrible things. They do not address their families that are extremely anti-black and specifically anti-African American. And they know this. And unfortunately, a lot of things that they have said, I've heard them say, I've seen them do. It was disturbing because, as you said, or as you asked, I see this in my community. But I ran from my community when I was younger because I thought I'm just going to go around black people and Latinos and all these other people, and that was going to solve the problem.
Mm.
Well, it wasn't, because I ran to those communities, and what did I find?
Mm.
Extremely anti-African American sentiment. And on top of that, everything that these young men and women say out of their mouths, every single thing I heard is exactly what the racist Ku Klux Klan like people that I was raised around said all of my life. These are the things I ran from. These are the things that all of these young boys, not yet men, are repeating while African Americans die around them, while the police murder them and funnel them into jails every single day. And these so-called brothers and sisters fully support all of this. So I'm a little confused as a white person.
It's very confusing. And so for my Muslims, you heard what, and when I met this brother, I met him in 2014. I was young. I was very young. The way in which I've seen him fight against injustices, I could count on my two hands the amount of Muslims I see fighting for that same injustice, or just any injustice at all. What I see is docile, every day, I'm a 9-to-5 worker, but just 9 to 5 conditioned Muslims who are just going on and saying, oh, that's just how things are. I had a brother tell me, oh, say cool, you gotta take it easy, bro. Allah just made things that way. What? Are you kidding me? This brother had the audacity to tell me that Allah just made things like this. No, he didn't. Okay, of course, Allah made it that way. But Allah just didn't make it that way. Allah made it that way so that you can see and make the change. You get what we're saying? He didn't just make things that he didn't make these. Allah did not create these paths for no reason. He created these paths so that he can test you to see what you're going to do. You call yourself a believer, okay. No problem. You're a believer. Now, this person is going through this. What are you going to do about it? Because a believer, I told you what a believer is. A believer, and this is another, Surah Al-Imran is a very powerful surah in the Quran. Any of my Muslims who are listening to this right now, please study this surah. It's the second longest surah in the Quran, I believe. Or the third. But it is one of the most important surahs. One of all surahs are important, but this surah is very important. Allah says, I'm about to go in. Oh my God. Let me fix myself. Allah says, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. He says, our ummah is the best ummah to have ever risen amongst the Muslim generations. Look at what Allah is saying about our generation. This is our generation. He says, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. This Muhammad's ummah is the best ummah to have ever risen on the face of this earth. Why? Allah says why. Listen to why. He said why. Allah does not talk for no reason. He did not bring the Quran down for no reason. He brought it for a reason. He says, تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. You enjoin what is right and you forbid what is evil and you believe in Allah. Let me repeat that again. تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. You enjoin what is good and you forbid what is evil. Oh my God. Hold on. Let me drink some water. You Muslims who are out there, please study the Quran. What you're doing is you are literally joining the oppressors. You are joining evil. You are doing the complete opposite of what Allah is commanding you to do. You are enjoining what is evil and you are forbidding that which is good. Talking about black people or African Americans don't need reparations. What? Did Allah not say in the Quran, هَلْ تُجِزَوْنَ إِلَّا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ? I'm going to repay you back for exactly that which you used to do on the day of judgment. Allah says in the Quran, هَلْ تُجِزَوْنَ إِلَّا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Are you not going to be repaid exactly what you're supposed to do, but you're against reparations? So these people who had their land stolen from them, who had their wealth stolen from them, who were enslaved for 400 plus years and continue to be enslaved, these people are not supposed, if Allah is going to give us exactly whatever it is that we used to do in due measure, what do you expect from human beings?
There you go.
What do you expect from human beings? You see, us Muslims, and to any community out there, this goes, to be honest, I'm going towards the Muslim community, but as Betash has stated, this can also go to any community. I'm pretty sure there's scripts within the Bible that's saying the same thing that I'm saying. There's verses within the Torah that says things like this. So I'm not the only one that's saying this.
White people and Europeans do this all the time. I mean, the Bible existed, obviously, longer than 400 years ago. And so all the things that the Bible says now largely were in the Bible then. And all of the good things, I guess, beside the, promotion of slave owning and stuff like that, these people were doing and promoting and saying they were good Christians and believed in God and all this stuff while they were enslaving Africans and while they were colonizing the rest of the world. I mean, again, we have to also understand that Europeans learned everything that they know from Arabs. And these Arabs were worshiping Allah. Now, that's not to say that Islam encourages this behavior and that Islam is evil. But we must understand that clearly there is historical precedent for people who worship, who do the wrong things, yet still
call themselves Muslims
from motives that are, various economic and all that. But you see, here we are again, or here we are still. So white people have done this all the time. And I'm talking about the white people being Spaniards, Dutch, Portuguese, English, everybody. All of those countries, all of those nationalities, they're all white, slave-owning, slave merchant people, languages, and cultures. There is nothing non-white about Spanish other than the non-white people that they enslaved and raped and colonized who were forced to speak that language. So this happens all the time. And for, this is why it's confusing for a lot of, maybe white people or whether they're liberals or whatever. People hear other groups, other races say these things and, it actually gives racist white people, it gives them confirmation because they say, well, look, those people aren't white and they're saying the same things about African Americans and about black people in general. So, all of this is, deep stuff that we can expand on and we're going to expand on. But I'm glad that you brought this up because this is very important. And the same way that these young boys that we know who are supposedly growing into young men, they may be considered men culturally, but they're not really man status. They have not really gone outside the mentality of a boy, regardless of how old they are, even regardless of if they're married. Because these are seriously stupid lies, misinformation. I mean, my family, I'm probably maybe 2 or 3 generations removed from all the places my family is from. We're still white, we're still American, but we were immigrants at one point not too long ago. So who are we to come to this country to say that African Americans don't deserve reparations or that African Americans don't work? How nice it must be.
They're lazy.
How nice it must be to willfully come into a country run by white supremacists and then say all the things that white supremacists have been saying all of these years before you and your family got here. And then you think you're cool, you think you're American, you think you're knowledgeable by just regurgitating these things that make absolutely no sense. Who do any of us think we are to have anything negative to say against or about African Americans? None of our families built this country. If you come here, you accept the debt owed to African Americans, to freedmen, to ADOS people, the people who single-handedly their ancestors built this country. You, us, we have no place saying anything against these people.
Yes, that is a fact. And again, Muslims, this does not uphold justice, right? By you saying African Americans are lazy, African Americans are that's not you think you're fighting for justice by saying African Americans are lazy?
Those were the same things that white people said as they were hanging their ancestors from trees. So, yeah, these young people might want to learn their history, or they might want to just keep their mouths shut because they're standing in the way of justice. This is not moral for anybody to do.
This is not. And what you're doing, as I said, you're going against justice. Against, you are literally enabling evil to happen because, as Beth has said, right, this country, its very fabric is rooted in white supremacy. I want to repeat that again. This country's fabric is rooted in white supremacy. So therefore, everything that they used to do, enslave people, hang people, burn people, etc. Yeah, they've stopped. Well, they stopped doing it in a mass scale. We can put it like that.
Well, they stopped doing it in the forms that they used to do it, but now they just do it, in jail.
In different ways.
Yeah, prison, mass incarceration.
Right. So you could honestly look at all of that and say that, and America hasn't paid African Americans or ADOS people, American descendants of chattel, slavery, freedmen, just say that they're not owed reparations. Think about it. For my Muslims, what is the punishment for owing somebody a debt when you die? There's a big punishment for that. When you owe somebody money and you have not made amends for it in Islam, there's a punishment for that until that debt is paid back. Come on, man.
Interesting.
Until that debt is paid back, that person has leverage over you.
And I think a lot of people right now may be listening to this and probably doing their best to ideologically remove themselves from complicity in this, meaning, oh, I don't do that, or how I do it is not, I would pump the brakes on that too, because honestly, all of us are complicit. If you have said any of these things, if you think any of these things and you haven't said it yet, you are equally as guilty as somebody that has said it and that has been perpetuating it. Because eventually, your belief in these lies is going to influence how you act in the world. Whether you say the stupidity, whether you're silent, whether you're quiet, it's the same thing. It is still participation and getting in the way of, and not participating in, I should say, injustice.
Powerful. So, as a Muslim, and anyone who's listening, you don't have a choice but to uphold justice in your community, because let me tell you, if you don't, what came for the past is going to come to the future. I'm going to repeat it again. If you don't uphold justice in your communities, what came in the past is coming for the future. I'll show you an example. As I've stated before, everything that's happening right now is as a result of people not upholding justice. They're talking about my generation, me and Betty's generation, the millennials and the Zoomers. They're talking about by the time we retire, at the whopping age of 67. Who the hell wants to retire at 67? Who made the rule that you see what I'm talking about? That's not fair. That's an injustice. Who made that rule that we should be working until 67? But you see, they're talking about our generation may not even have Social Security when we retire. So you telling me I've worked basically my entire life. Not basically. I've worked my entire life, 67 years of my life. And you telling me that I'm not going to receive Social Security?
Mm-hmm.
The same Social Security that I've worked for?
Right.
Oh, but the system is what it is. We can't do nothing about it. Yes, you can. That's the wrong answer. That is incorrect. As Betash said, that's wrong. You got it wrong. And guess what? You're going to be held accountable for it if you don't try to change it.
And whether you're religious or non-religious, it doesn't matter, because this is not a specifically religious show. This is not only for Muslims. It's not only for people who believe in God. It's not any of that.
Yeah.
We're coming from our perspectives. These are the communities that we are from. And so whether you believe in God, whether you don't, it doesn't matter, because there's still morals in culture.
Yes.
All people have a moral code, a moral conduct. And considering white people have instilled the immoral characteristic of anti-blackness across the world and across most cultures, most especially anti-African Americanness, we're all guilty. Especially, I mean, and it's not to say, people love like saying like, oh, white guilt and, this and that. I don't, on one hand, it's like, well, white people should feel guilty. I mean, even if you haven't done anything directly, you should feel guilty. I mean, being white is not something that's like necessarily admirable, considering how whiteness came about, nor how our culture continues to be today. But that doesn't mean you need to like go and like shine black people's shoes and stuff. It's like you see white people do weird shit like that all the time, and it's like stupid. It's like, what are you performing apologies for when you could be advocating for and pushing for actual real legislation and voting with actual intent, as opposed to voting blue no matter who?
Vote blue no matter who.
So these are just many more of those issues, and it's we can't get confused about the meaning of things and what we actually need to be doing. If we don't understand the meaning of things, we say this dumb stuff over and over again. And by thinking those things and saying those things, we are just complacent. As Sekou said, we don't vote properly. We're not following the right content. We're not taking the right political action. All of these things, whatever it may be, whether we mentioned it here or not, this comes with moral there's a moral responsibility here. So whether you are religious, whether you're not religious, we are all complicit in this system. We're all complicit in what's happening to African American people in this country. And so wherever that karma or debt or however you want to see it, it's coming for everybody. We are not going to sit here and continue to live off of the backs of the people and their ancestors who built this country and think that we are somehow good Christians, good Muslims, good human beings, good anything. You're not. You cannot sit and be accountable your whole life and a parasite and think you're going to get away with it. We have to do the best that we can do to change what needs to be changed. And we all know what that is. People like to play stupid. Information's out there. Information is it. We are all exposed to everything now. You can't play stupid anymore. Now we know who's who, and we know who cares and who doesn't.
Period. So and to Betash's point, I want to be clear that I'm speaking to the Muslim community because I'm a Muslim. But this doesn't only apply to Muslims. Right. As Betash, and I've kind of stated it, but Betash perfectly framed it. This applies to any community. I don't care what you call yourself. I don't care what you consider yourself. This applies to you. 100% this applies to you. And so this whole landscape of just upholding justice and seeing the injustices in our community and not batting an eye. As Jiddu Krishnamurti said, this is not healthy. It's no measure of health. This is not healthy for us to be comfortable in a profoundly sick society. It is not healthy. It is unhealthy to see your brother or your sister suffering, community suffering, your brother or your sister about to be evicted from their apartments and riddled in debt as a result of how this country is structured. You see this and you just, oh, it's their fault. They just need to work hard. They just need to work harder. They need to get a second job. A second job? I had a brother tell me, oh, if you don't make enough money with your first job, just get a second job. You want people to kill themselves? You want people to... We're already getting stressed out in our 40-hour week jobs, right? Your manager's asking you, to do this, to do that. Especially if you're a low-waged, worker, you get blamed for every little thing that happens within the company. Mind you, there's other people who are up top who are absolutely incompetent and you're competent, but you're getting blamed for it because you're getting paid less. In lieu of all of that, this brother is telling me and other people get a second job. So you want people to die?
And not to mention that when people say that, especially when they're non-African Americans, whomever they may be, you're also clearly not aware, nor do you care, about all of the other factors that stress out African American people differently and much worse than every other group. Every other group.
Because of their history.
Which still affects them today. That past is not disconnected from anything that's happening right now. Not at all. There is a clear thread, a clear connection that has not been disconnected for 500 plus years.
I want to take you guys back for a second, right? I want to show you an example and take you guys back. Let's say you saw somebody, God forbid, you saw somebody get hit by a car when you were 6. Just, this person is crossing the street, boom! 150 miles per hour, this person is gone. At 6 years old, you saw that with your own 2 eyes. Would you forget that? I know 98% of people that I know would never forget that. They'll be able to tell that story to their graves. Until they lay inside of their graves on their deathbed. They'll be able to tell, yeah, when I was 6 or 7 years old, I saw somebody got hit by a car and it followed me for the rest of my life. So can you imagine? Can you even begin to imagine what ADOS, African Americans, have been through and the trauma that carries on generation after generation, the issues, the problems, the systemic violence, the systemic oppression that they've had to go through, that they continue to go through, that has not been addressed. You see, in order to fix a problem, you must first learn about the problem and then create a solution for the problem.
Yes.
America hasn't come up with a solution for the problems of our fellow brothers and sisters whom are African American. They've decided that they're going to make them a bottom caste. They're going to make ADOS people a bottom caste. Because after all, that's what capitalism thrives off of, right? You see, capitalism, the concept of it today, somebody has to be at the bottom so that the people up top can continue being the people up top. America has decided that that bottom is going to be African Americans. And the immigrants who come here, they step on the backs of these African Americans, of these freedmen, of these ADOS people who built this country. Let's take Senegal, for example. You come from Senegal. You was born and raised in Senegal. Your ancestors came from Senegal. They built Senegal. The way your ancestors contributed. If you're from Senegal and you was born, you have 6, 7, 10 generations of family that were born and raised and grew up in and contributed to Senegal. They contributed to the growth of Senegal, and they contributed to what is Senegal today. Imagine someone comes into Senegal and they see, okay, they see, poor people, people who are struggling to get jobs, people who are struggling to get their feet up, people who are just struggling. And they say these people are lazy. Senegalese people will look at this person like, who are you? You're not from here. You don't know our history. How do you have the audacity to come here in my country, Senegal, and tell me that I'm lazy? Are you crazy?
Now, let's just say this supposed person that immigrated to Senegal in this hypothetical situation, what if their family had been there for 30, 40, 50 years? You think the response would be the same? Would they be like, oh, okay, well, now you can call us lazy? Do you think that Senegalese people would do that?
I don't think so. Them Senegalese, and I know, shout out to the Senegalese community. I love my brothers and sisters there. But I know them Senegalese people gonna be like, you was here 30 years? And you have who are you? Get out of my face. Get out of my face, man. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the history of this country. Get out of my face.
Yes, sir.
And look, the Senegalese people would have every right to say that. Because it's their country. They built it. You don't know anything about my country and how we built it. So don't call me lazy. So what is it for? Someone who's Senegalese who can come to this country, or Gambian or Jamaican or whoever you want to call yourself, wherever you're from, to come to this country and call African Americans lazy, call them, say they don't like to work, they're this, they're that. You don't know their history. You know nothing.
And why do you think becoming American and becoming a citizen requires you to know very little to no actual American history? I've seen all the questions. I have many immigrant friends who have become citizens. I've heard a lot of the questions. I've seen the tests online. None of it gives you any sort of understanding or real, not even the tip of the iceberg as to what we're speaking about. So, therefore, what does that tell you about a white supremacist country that will allow you to come in and be a citizen completely without knowing anything about the history of this country and how it was built? There's a reason for that.
There's a reason. I'm going to look, I just searched up the whatever 100 questions, that that the United States comes up with, in order for you to become a president, right? It says, one of the questions is, right? So I'm gonna pull up one of the questions that's asked in order for you to become a U.S. citizen. I want to show you guys how much of a joke this country is. One of the questions, it says, what is one right or freedom from the First Amendment? It says freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of press, freedom of petition the government. Every one of these that I told you, the government does the exact opposite of it as we speak. Freedom of speech, you can't say certain things on Facebook, on Instagram, on whatever they limit your speech. I know currently about at least 10 people who are probably blocked on social media, or they can't speak on social media for 30 days.
Absolutely.
I have personally been warned multiple times. Betash has been banned from posting on social media for over 30 days. How many times? Twice or three?
This is probably my second or third page over the last 4 years.
4 years.
This one's,
So that's freedom of speech, for speaking or saying things that are in alignment with justice in our communities. Freedom of religion, that is obviously up for grabs. Freedom of assembly, just when was it? A couple of months ago, there was a protest, right? Or last year, Black Lives Matter protests. They assembled, and what were they met with? Bats and batons and pepper spray, right? Freedom of press, freedom to petition the government. But you see, this is one of the so an immigrant who takes the exam is gonna be like, oh yeah, we have the right, freedom of speech. Do you really? So all of this is just, it's just madness. It's just madness.
And it adds to the confusion of immigrant people. You know, it's the same type of stuff that my ancestors believed and learned. You know, when Europeans came here, when most people come here, many, maybe not most, but many at this point, you know, come from horrible conditions and difficulties in their own countries that have been destabilized and all of that. When you come from chaos like that, it's the trauma that's involved in it, the trauma that's in that is a part of the moving, the getting here, the crossing borders and everything, the people that die. It's horrifying. And so that puts you in a space where you're traumatized. And so once you get to a place of safety, anything that anyone tells you in that new place that's nice, that sounds like this, that sounds like that, that aligns with the way you've been taught that it is here, of course it's going to be easy to believe that, to think it's great. You know, it's a psychological thing. You're in trauma. You're experiencing trauma. You may have witnessed people die. You may have lost children. You may have done this. Of course you're going to run with open arms towards people that are telling you, oh, come here, you can get a job, you can do this, you can do that. Of course, and everybody buys into it.
Perfect.
So, you know, it's easy to see how people get tricked. But a lot of people come here willfully. Their family already has money. They have money back in their country. They're already making the equivalent of $100,000 back in their country. There's some immigration firms that specifically help do H-1Bs and all of that for people in Asia, South Asia, all these places. They're already coming here with the capabilities and the educations that far supersede African Americans.
Who built the country,
who have been forced and remain by force the bottom caste of the country. And then all of these people who immigrate here, they get high tech jobs, this and that. You come here, your parents were not born here, you're the first generation, second generation, whatever. And then you do horrible things like become a cop. And you just, you know, continue to uphold stupidity that's required for that job. But I mean, you know, there's a lot of Muslims that I met, you know, that support that. They become cops themselves. And I think it's important, you know, I mean, I'm not a Muslim, but I think that from what you've taught me, from what I've heard about Islam, it sounds like becoming a cop is actually haram. And the violence that it, I mean, I don't know where in Islam that they promote committing the violence that is committed by police on black people.
There is none.
So, I mean, if it seems to me, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do things like that, it makes you complicit in that violence, whether you do it or not. I mean, how many Muslims, whether they're cops or not, would support all the times that police sodomize black males?
And there's proof. We're not saying this. We want y'all to understand, right? Real quick, right? We're not saying this just to say these. These are the atrocities that the police have done is astronomical. And it's recorded every day. Police just continue to do horrible things to black people and to people in general. But specifically black people as well. But go ahead.
So it just seems, again, like it reminds me of what you were saying earlier about hypocrites and stuff. You know, Muslim men or women that become cops. I think it might be, it's probably time you realize that if you have that job and you think it's good, you have to accept the fact that you are also complicit in acts of sodomy, whether you do it or not, because you're defending the jobs. You may not be defending the person that did it, but actually that whole system of policing is built on sodomizing black males. It's built on murdering black males. It's built on slavery. And if you accept that job, you are complicit in that. And that kind of makes you a hypocrite to what you're saying. These are sort of the things that we need to really come to terms with. And it's not just police. I mean, we see deli owners committing the same violence, different groups, all sorts of different groups wanting to become police, wanting to build businesses in black communities and act like the parasites that they are by doing this. They call cops on black people all the time. They take the money, the resources from these communities, and they participate in some of the violence that happens in these communities. So, the problem is that whole story, all of those actions, it's all been done before. Guess by who? White people, Europeans. When they came here and built their businesses and became cops and became firemen and became all of these, all of these areas that hold up society. This is what white people did. And they participated in anti-black, anti-African American behavior, violence, ideology, and lies. And now, as I spoke about I think I wrote the essay like some months back. It was definitely like this year or something. All the other groups that are immigrating here, they're all doing the same thing. They're following in the same footsteps. And now, just like you said earlier in the episode, they're saying a lot of these same things. And all the things that you listed on top of other things that I've heard, these are all things that racist white people have been saying since before the 1900s. And now everybody else is coming in and doing the same exact thing. And what do you think the result of that is going to be?
Oh my God, that was attachment. That was powerful.
Nobody's thinking about these things.
Nobody.
They're just doing it blindly.
And I'll say another quote before we segue into some of the things our community members say that are so dangerous. It is just so dangerous. Imam Shadi Muhammad, I was actually taking a course with him when he mentioned this quote. And, shout out to the few community members who said that I should have this, this quote on a shirt. But this quote is powerful. And it was a class that we were taking. It was a marriage course. And it was towards the end of the course. And he said, wisdom is the ability to see something coming before it comes.
Aha.
I'm going to repeat it again. Wisdom is the ability to see something coming before it comes. Right? So, something happened here. This is fishy here. Right? Someone who's wise will be like, time out. Let me take a step back. Democrats have been dominating the Bronx for the past 30, 40 years. We've seen nothing. In fact, we've seen the decline, the continuous decline of the Bronx. So, maybe let's try something. Someone who's wise will be like, and I'm not saying, let's vote for Republican. No. But somebody wise will be like, time out. This ain't working. It didn't work in 1970. It didn't work in 1980. It didn't work in 1990. It didn't work in 2000. It didn't work in 2010. It didn't work in 2020. And it may not work in 2030.
Probably after all of that non-work.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening.
I don't think it's going to work. Someone wise will be like, but someone who isn't wise will be like, vote blue no matter who. They're gonna figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
By the time they figure it out, I'm sorry to say this, you might be dead. You might be dead by the time they even gather information to try to figure it out. And that's why we got to hold the fire to their feet. And we going to do it.
Right.
That's a fact.
Because everyone that voted for the Democrats is not doing it, and both clearly Republicans and Democrats as political parties, neither of them is working. And that's why we hear so much, or depending on who you follow or you listen to, you'll hear a lot about, creating a third party and doing things like that. And some of their politics, even these third party, politics, I mean, they're problematic because, again, they focus on workers and they focus on class. That's not a problem in and of itself because we need to be fighting for workers. We are all workers. Workers need to have rights. It's just that we continue to forget that every single thing that exists around us is attached to race. Of course, there's plenty of people that will tell you otherwise. They're lying. These are leftists. These are Republicans. These are conservatives of all races. They're lying to you. And, as we go on with different episodes and different topics, we'll extrapolate why those things are lies and how they're lies. But yeah, your liberal teachers, your colleges, your job, whoever's telling you that, you know, there's good reason to vote for Democrats and there's this, that, whatever, the myriad list of reasons that they will give you, especially your professors, especially your school, especially your liberal friends and institutions, they're all lying to you, and they're lying to themselves.
Absolutely. Um, let's get into some of the things that I'm sorry to say that some of our foolish members of our community say. Right? They say things like, "Oh, we're all one ummah," or from other communities, "I don't see color."
Mm-hmm.
It's a very problematic state. And look, as a disclaimer, we all in the Muslim community, speaking specifically to the Muslims, and then right? Yes, we all one ummah, of course. That's true. Theoretically, we're one ummah, but today, practically, we're obviously not. So by you saying that is a means of dismissing all of the injustices that are happening in our communities, and you're complicit in going against the verses that Allah revealed to you. See, wisdom is the ability to see something coming before it comes. Y'all are not really thinking about it in retrospect. When you say things like we're all one ummah, you're dismissing an African American or an ADOS person or a freedman who has not experienced the same thing you've experienced. Let me tell you guys a personal story. I had the blessings of visiting Jamaica with my wife back in August. Now, I'm not African American. I'm an African, West African, but nonetheless, I'm black. My skin is black, right? So, not all, I want to be clear, not all, some of the experiences that African Americans go through, I may go through as well from time to time. Whilst I was here in America, and even as we speak, any store, any supermarket that I go into, even with a thobe on, I am constantly followed like an animal. I'm followed around like an animal by even people from amongst our own ummah. They think I'm stealing. Whatever that black people steal all the time. They're stealers. You got to watch out for them. Mind you, the people in Wall Street are stealing your tax dollars every day. You got, someone goes into your store and steals, cool, right? All right, bad, right? That's cool. It's bad to steal. I agree. But there's people in Wall Street and in your government who are stealing your tax dollars and giving it to Israel to build iron domes. So to go back to it, I went to Jamaica. And for the first time in my life, an all-black nation, for the first time in my life, I wasn't followed in stores. I wasn't looked at as a criminal. I actually felt like a decent human being. I felt like a human being for the first time. So how can you say we're all one ummah when other people don't see it and don't act in that way? Because practically, sadly, we're not. We're split into different factions. I don't see color. Yet, most people see color. If I walk into H&M right now, and Betash walks into H&M right now, they're going to follow me, and they're going to leave Betash. Mm-hmm. You want to know why? Because they do see color. Mm-hmm. It's not that they don't see color. They absolutely do see color. And they use your color against you.
Yep. And it happens all the time in the Bronx. The Morton Williams supermarket on Kingsbridge and Jerome.
Oh, wait. You said which one? The Morton Williams. One on Kingsbridge, right?
Yep. Forget it. You know how many times I've seen that staff abuse black people? You know how many times they've called the cops and they got black people outside abusing them? I saw one of them attack these two black youths. Now, I didn't see anything. Maybe they stole, maybe they didn't. But I can't tell you how many times, whenever I'm in that area and I've gone to that place, they got some black person in the front of the store. The person is, of course, guilty and innocent. People always say I didn't steal anything. But I've literally seen them realize that the person didn't steal anything. I was actually in there with an African American friend of mine. We weren't walking together the first time, like initially, but then we met up. And by the time we got to the cash register, they had tried to go after him. And I got right in the lady's face, and I got right in the staff's face. And of course, they didn't check any camera. They didn't show any proof. They didn't say anything. I've seen them attack people many, many times. Now, I'm not always over there, but I've been going there or passing through that area for many, many years that I've been living in the Bronx. So, and I've spoken, I followed somebody outside that had just been accosted by them. I've seen them physically attack black people. A young woman, they broke her book bag or her purse and whatever. So again, it's the Bronx. There's lots of poor people. Lots of people are going to steal. And of course, African Americans and many other black communities are usually the poorest. And that's by design. So again, whether some of those people actually stole or whether they didn't, regardless of, and none of the owners or staff of that supermarket or any of the others that I've seen are quote unquote white people. These are people that actually have black people within their own groups.
Very important.
So, this behavior it perpetuates and all of that. Everybody does it willfully. The thing is that even in the situations where I'm sure they may have experienced theft because, they're trying to not lose, whatever profit, they're a business. There's no solution in the community. There's no solution to help these people who have to steal. And these people that run that store or their business, whatever, who clearly could care less about making sure that black people aren't abused. Clearly, they have no issue jumping right in and physically abusing a black person. They seem to enjoy it. They don't seem to have any issue doing it, so they must enjoy it to some degree. And that's not just that Morton Williams, that's many stores. Everybody has been conditioned to see black people, and especially African Americans, as worthless, as useless, and so they have no problem abusing them. But there's no solution. And of course, we're not seeing a solution from AOC. We're not seeing a solution from Richie Torres. And we're not going to see any solution from any of the quote-unquote non-white or whatever they may be, wherever they may be from, politicians that are doing their rounds on election year or whatever the case may be, to be this, to be that. You see the flyers everywhere. No one's got any real agenda for black Americans, whether they be black immigrants, African Americans, nothing. I mean, they'll say some liberal BS campaign stuff that they're blah, 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 like AOC and like Richie Torres. And then when they get into office, we all know the story, nothing happens. So once again, there is no solution. So that means these people that have stolen from stores before, who need to steal in order to eat, because we live in a profoundly sick society that allows people to starve and die, there is no solution to help them. So it's just a cycle. So these businesses will find no other reason, supposedly, to abuse black people who steal from them. They're not concerned about, well, what's making these people steal? What can we do as part of the community, as a big business in the community or a little business in the community, to help these people? No. They're just concerned with, oh, they're stealing and they're black. Beat them, get them out, call the cops. And then, of course, the cops are also from the same racial group that they're from. So they're speaking the same language. They understand, it's unspoken anti-blackness. And that just continues on. So you see, once you're acclimated, once you become American, doesn't matter whether it was Europeans like my family who all did all of these things. They did all of these things. They had businesses. They abused black people. The cops were from the same groups as us. They all spoke the same language. They all understood the same unspoken and spoken language. And they did it, and they did it, and they did it. And it kept black people, kept ADOS people as the bottom caste. And now, as I said before, all of these immigrant groups, whether they came here in the 80s, the 60s, whatever the case may be, they're all following in the same footsteps as white people. Because this is, in the end, the goal. You want to become white. You want to be accepted into whiteness. You want to have some of the privileges as white people. And you're going to do whatever you have to in order to get that. And of course, the one biggest, most effective social capital to use is black people. And since everybody sees them as worthless, they all have no problem abusing them.
Absolutely no problem. Betaz, you see, that was powerful, bro. And the reason why I say that's powerful because, you see, in any society in which the people up top are committing injustices, obviously the people on the bottom are going to commit injustices as well. For example, as Betaz mentioned, when you don't provide resources to communities, what else are they going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many of my friends or kids that I grew up with in my community, their fathers are in prison? And their mothers have like they together with their fathers, they have like 5, 6 kids. Their father has no means of providing for his children because he's in prison. And now the mother has to go out and work. And she can't provide for all 5 or 6 kids. What do you think those kids are going to do? Why won't they go steal in Morton Williams? Why won't they go steal in Fine Fair or in the bodega across the street from them? They have to because they have to survive. There's mothers out here in the Bronx and the South Bronx who don't have infant milk for their babies. Mm-hmm. What do you think their baby is crying? He or she is hungry. They don't have food. What do you think they're going to do?
And then you go and you tell this to white people, or you go and you tell this to
other immigrant groups,
Muslims, immigrant, also that.
Whoever.
What do they say? They'll say, oh, well, that's because they're lazy and they don't want to work. And we've already explained why that's wrong. So you see, it just cycles around. It cycles around. It cycles around.
There's a dude that I grew up with in my community. And when I spoke to him, he was telling me about his cousin, who's a girl that I knew. We went to school together. We went to elementary school together. And she's around my age, maybe a year older than me. She was in jail recently. And the reason why she was in jail was because she just had a baby. Her baby father was in jail for maybe a petty crime, right? Having marijuana, whatever. She just gave birth. Her baby's crying at night. This is what he's explaining to me. And I'm like, wow. He's like, her baby's crying. He's hungry. She doesn't really have a lot of support from family members because they're also trying to get it. They barely have any money. 80% of Americans are in debt. Right? So now she had to go into these stores multiple times and steal baby infant milk to allow for her baby to survive. And food stamps is not enough because she herself got to eat. Because I know some of you, she could have had food stamps. Food stamps is not enough for someone to survive with a kid here in New York City. That's a fact.
It's also not always easy to get the food stamps. I mean, at times you can very quickly if you need to, but to maintain that, because I've been on that system and within it for a significant amount of time, I've seen it from the inside. I've seen how they treat black people in there. They deliberately hire black people. Those black people also mistreat the black people.
Yes.
And, that being whatever it is, the real issue is how the system is set up. It's how that piece of the city works, and it works horrible. And so not only are they not giving you enough to really feed yourself properly, and how they limit you on things that you can get and stuff like that. The process is, ridiculous. They hire people that really don't care. People's cases are closed all the time. They close them for absolutely nothing, and then they have to end up back at the center, be there all day for the workers to be, taking long lunches, stretching out the day. They know these people got kids. They don't allow you to bring food into the waiting room. And then I know people that have worked on the inside. Some of these workers are sniffing drugs at their desk and nodding off. I mean, whether that's a small percentage or not, regardless, it's happening. So these are the symptoms, and these are the things that you will see in a system that is deliberately made to not work, to only just barely work. So again, all of these things that people say in our communities, and my community and your community are extremely different communities. So why are all these other communities saying all the things that my community is saying? Since my community is responsible for all of this horrible stuff, why are they saying that? Do they know that they're saying it? If they don't, why don't they know that? Where did they get it from? And why don't they know better? Where are we informing ourselves? We all are stupid at some point. We are all uninformed. We all don't know everything. But again, here we are where all of the information around the world is largely in our hands with these smart devices that are surveilling us. These smart devices that we have access to all this information. We see it all the time. Just because you scroll past it in your timeline doesn't mean you don't know what's going on. You know exactly what's going on. That's why you're avoiding it. That's why when you see it pop up on your timeline, it takes you half of a second to scroll past it because you know what it is. That makes you complicit. That makes all of us complicit.
It does. So this sister is in jail as a result. She's out now. She's working. And at the time, she couldn't work. She just gave birth. What do you want? A woman? You see how heartless our society has become. Somebody will listen to this and be like, she could have got a job. She just gave birth. She hasn't even hit basically postpartum, her postpartum period. Period. She hasn't even reached that part yet. And you have so what am I trying to say? What is Sekou trying to say? The symptoms of the petty little crimes that happen in our community, stealing and all of this stuff, right? It's bad. I agree. We don't want it to happen. If I had a business, I wouldn't want somebody to steal. But the problem is the people up top, the people who have power. What are they doing to actually solve the issues or solve the issue that people are stealing from stores? Most of the people that you see stealing from stores that I've noticed, they don't have basic necessities. Why won't New York City say, okay, everyone has the right to certain basic necessities and actually give it to them in its proper way?
That's the question.
Why isn't it a citywide crisis? Citywide alert that's like, all right, the homelessness, the amount of people who have food insecurity, who don't have food, who can't pay their. Why aren't all of these an emergency right now? Maybe if people had enough food to eat, quality food to eat,
and a job that pays good.
Job that pays not $15 an hour, which is chump change, and they're able to pay their rent, maybe they wouldn't steal from the stores.
I think that's quite possible.
And we'll end this segment with this. We as a society, we have to wake up. We live in a profoundly sick society. Our society's sick. There's people stealing from stores. There's people being evicted from their apartments. COVID has exacerbated depression, has exacerbated sadness. The suicide rate is alarming. The amount of people who are doing harm to themselves and their bodies is astronomical. The amount of homicides, people just angry and killing other people and shooting other people is astronomical. It just went higher and higher, and it's becoming higher and higher. The amount of homeless people on our streets, it's just ridiculous. We live in a profoundly sick society. To my Muslims or non-Muslims, whatever you consider yourself, atheist, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, it doesn't matter which community you come from. We live in a sick society. And unless we come up with measures to make sure that our society comes from a sick society into a more healthy society, this is going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And don't look at it like, oh, this is not happening to my community. Okay. It may not be happening to your community right now. But guess what? It may be coming to a community near yours. So I want us to really be careful. Start thinking. Start being wise. Use the brain that was given to you. Whether you believe God gave it to you or whether you believe that it was just given to you or you just had it. Use it for a purpose. Mm-hmm. Sit down. We all live in New York City. Why is this person coming up to me with a cup saying, do you have change? In the richest quote unquote country in the world. Why does that even exist? Why are people about to get evicted from their apartments in which they live in the city in which their tax dollars go to every paycheck? Why are these things happening? Mm-hmm. And we need to sit down and ponder upon it and come up with solutions and fight the injustice. Otherwise, we're going to be complicit in the very injustices that are happening.
Mm-hmm. And we can't fall back on our religion, our beliefs, and pretend like we're, good this or good that or, whatever. Because clearly, as we started lining out here, most of the people that say and believe that are, lying to themselves and they're lying to you. There's lots of hypocrisy happening. All of our communities are participating in this, and many people in our communities as well are helping to fight against it. But this conversation is important because we have to realize all the little and subtle ways that, we and our friends and our family are participating in that. And that's merely just by these incorrect ideas, these ways and these lies that we've been fed. And it requires us, if you want to get past that, it requires us to hear things and listen to people that might not entirely say everything that you want to hear all the time. It might be time for you to start, for many of us, to start thinking outside the box a bit. It's not, we can't think along the same lines.
We can't. And in closing, sometimes I was born and raised in the South Bronx, and sometimes I look outside and I walk and I see the depression, the sadness, the poverty in my community. And sometimes it honestly makes me want to cry. Mm-hmm. Almost every day, it makes me want to shed it. Sometimes I shed tears because we really live in a sick society, and we can't continue doing what we continue to do as it stands right now. Something has to change. And as Beth has wonderfully put, we may not agree to everything. We may not see eye to eye, on every issue just because, right? But we can all fundamentally agree that there's something wrong. We don't live in a healthy society. And as a result, something has to change.
Not only must we at least agree to some degree, but if you agree to whatever degree you do, that still requires political action.
It does.
You cannot just say you believe in something or, that you agree with something and then stay quiet or be liberal or just, do whatever it is that you could do to avoid it. Not every job, not every task, not every action is something that everybody and anybody can do, but we all have to do something. And everything that's been done already, that can't be on the new list. But the good news is, for all of you listening, is that me and Sekou are not done with this conversation.
We're not.
This is just the beginning, so you'll be hearing so much more from us about this topic, so much more, and I know you're all excited to hear what else we have to say. So thank you for joining us, And we look forward to having you back, hearing your feedback, and going with us on this ride and throughout the rest of the season of this show.
Absolutely. Please subscribe to our channel, Preliminary Thoughts. Subscribe, turn on your notifications if you can. Share this video. This is powerful. This is needed in our communities. And we'll see you in our next episode. Peace.